Hey everybody, it's time for another episode of Real Degen Talk, and today we're going to talk about eviction, specifically in New York City. Now, I may have already doxed myself, and I can tell you now, I do live in New York City, and it's been an extremely unpleasant experience so far due to the pandemic and due to the liberal laws in the city, and it's just impossible for you to get someone out of your property. So, first of all, my sister owns a property in New York City, and I live in there acting as a landlord slash management slash super. Now, we are honest working people who have worked our whole lives to save up for the money to buy the property, to put a down payment on the property. We still own a ton of money, right? So she owns the house by name. So in order to help with the paying of the mortgage and all that, we rented out a first floor to people. Now, I'm not saying this entire thing wasn't our fault. It is partially our fault because we didn't screen the tenants too carefully. We were just too nice. We gave them the benefit of the doubt, and this is ending up biting us in the ass. So for those of you who are not familiar, in New York City, here's how you would evict someone. For various reasons. There are so many reasons why someone could get evicted. Now, we are not those greedy corporate rich people who owns land. We are mom and pop shop. We are tiny middle class people who are trying to make an honest living and try to rent out the property at a very fair market price to help people out. So we give them the place to live. Now, we actually give them 20% off their rent due to the pandemic because they had difficulties. They told us. Now, you'll see in the end this was all a lie. So basically we rented out the place. Here's a background story. Rented out the place, and we didn't do too much checking on the background. It turns out everything the person gave was fake. Fake name, fake ID, fake everything. Their name weren't even on the lease. This is the problem. They gave fake ID and fake everything. So in New York City, you can't really go to the court and say, hey, this is fake. So basically they paid that first 2 months rent, and then after that they just stopped paying. So honestly, obviously it was during the pandemic and you couldn't evict anyone during that time. So we had to stuff it and just took the loss every single month. And then pandemic finished and they lifted the eviction moratorium so we can start getting people out. But it turns out everybody's doing the same. There were so many people who were not paying their rents and just causing headaches to the landlord because they just don't give a F. They smoke around the properties. They throw cigarettes all around the property. They were super noisy at night. They don't sleep at night, and they don't even work. So these are party people, like extremely disrespectful of other people, and they were loud. They have crazy loud cars. The guy has 3 cars. The guy bought a PS5, and yet he says he couldn't pay any rent. So this is what we had to deal with. Just these low-life, useless, garbage people that you have to deal with. And we are doing everything we can to try to do our best to go to the court and try to kick them out. Now, the court don't listen to any of this, any of the things that I said. There's evidence. I have evidence, video proof that they go out and drink every night. They have 3 cars. They have PS5. They bought all the latest, all the brand name, everything. They obviously do have money, but they're not gonna pay. They just don't pay. So in New York City, the law is so tough that people can live in your property for free for almost a year, not paying any rent, and you still have to provide utilities like water and gas and heat for them. Now, I don't know how crazy this is. So by law, landlords who try to evict tenants by harassment, intentionally cutting utilities, or changing the lock can be arrested. So if I change the lock or if I cut off the utility because they haven't been paying rent for like a year, even though they have shown proof that they have money, I cannot even do any of this because if I do this, I'll get arrested. I'll issue a summon. We'll go to jail for up to a year. This is in New York City. This is the fuck. Oh, I'm gonna stop cursing now. It's a freaking extreme law. This applies to landlords who are taking advantage of people who are in trouble. But somehow it gets applied to people like us who are doing our best, who are everyday people, who are playing by the law. And then you have tenants who are not playing by the law, and who are taking advantage of this law. So it's impossible. We call the police on them, and the police can't do anything about it. And if you want to evict them, you have to do this instead. So you first have to give them a notice that you're gonna take them to court, or they have to get out. And if they don't get out, we're gonna take them to court. And tenants said, if the tenants wants to go out or not. If they do want to go out, okay, it ends. But obviously the tenants are gonna live in there because they don't have to pay rents. They're gonna take advantage of this. Fine. Then we're gonna go to court. The court, it's not 14. It's 14 to 90 days to get to court. For us, the experience was 3 months, just to get a court date. So they're able to live in your property for 3 months, rent free, and doing all of this shit to disturb your living, to disrupt your living, to this it's crazy. And then you serve the notice to the tenants, and then you have to wait for a court hearing date after 3 months. So in court, if they go to the court, they can still file for even more delay on it. And if the tenants, in our case, what's happening was the tenants didn't even bother to show up. And you know what the judge did? The judge will not issue a judgment. They actually postponed that for 2 more months, and to see if the tenants will show up. This is insane. It's been 5 months total. This is going to be 5 months total for this whole freaking process. They limited, so they haven't paid their rent for more than a year, and now you're going to add another 5 months to this. And we can't, like this law, we cannot do anything about that. So you have some lowlife living in your house, bringing in random people, random guests, and they smoke weed, they smoke cigarettes, they drink, and they yell at night at 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning because they have alcohol. It's nuts. It's at this point, it's harassment. So nothing happens. And even if you win, if you do end up winning through this whole process, they can still get some time for them to move out. If they still don't want to move out after that, you have to make an appointment with the law enforcement for them to forcibly move them out. And that's when it ends. So it could take a whole freaking year for this whole thing to finish. And it's insane. It's the mental scar that this thing is bringing into you. It's insane. At this point, I am done with New York City. It's too liberal. All these laws are terrible. And the people in power are a bunch of useless. I don't even want to go into this bail reform shit. You have DAs who refuse to prosecute people. That's why you have multiple shops, businesses closing, because you got criminals going in there, just take whatever they want and walk out of there. So why am I opening a business for that? They're not going to arrest these people. They're just going to continue to do this. It became a lawless state. So it's impossible. Right now it's really hard. I really regret. I want to get out of here. I really want to get out of New York City because it's pretty much a shithole right now. So for those of you who want to, I don't think you should ever live in New York City. You probably should visit New York City, but don't live in it because it's a terrible piece of shit place. The laws are in favor of criminals. The laws are tilted for people who are not playing by the rules. If you don't play by the rules, you get rewarded in New York City, and that's how crazy it is. So at this point, I have nothing. There's nothing I can do. You still got these people. Trust me. And there's so many situations where I couldn't contain my anger, and I almost did the wrong thing where I pretty much beat his ass and kick his ass, right? But I'm not gonna do it. I have to. I know this will only make it worse if I do it, right? So there's nothing good come out of it. So there's nothing we can do but to wait for the court to give us a freaking judgment so we can start kicking them out. At this point, they owe more than 5 figures in rent. And don't get me wrong. I understand the law, like why these laws are in place is to protect people who are legitimately like need like help by paying the rent. People who are in desperate situations. You do have asshole landlords, obviously, in the city, right? And that's why these laws exist, to prevent asshole landlords to take advantage of people. But we are not. We've been so we've been trying to help these guys, these people, the whole time. But what do? They bite you in the ass and try to take advantage of you. They told me. I confronted them, and they're like, "Hey, I'm not gonna pay you any rent. Do whatever you want. I'm just gonna live here, and the only way you can get me out is to have the court officers come and kick them out." They haven't. They said that to me, and I have it in recording, and I played that to the judge, and the judge still did not do anything. Useless judge. I mean, it's totally useless. So that's the reality of the situation in New York City. So if you think about buying property and rental property in New York City, forget about it. It's a piece of shit place to do. And yeah, at this point, I'm trying to see if I can get out of this place. It's totally unfair. Anyway, that's the rants for today. So I hope you like this video. Let me know what you think about this situation. And I hope to see you guys in the next episode.